Hello, this is another video on trigonometry, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to calculate a missing angle. So that is our learning intention, and we're going to be needing our scientific calculators again, but there's one extra button I'm going to need to tell you about, and that is if you have a Casio calculator, it'll look like this. It will say shift, or if you have a Sharp calculator, it'll say second function. And what we're going to be doing is, rather than using the regular sine, cosine and tangent functions like we were last time, sine, cosine and tangent, if you look above those buttons, you'll see that there's a sine with a little -1 and a cos with a little -1. And those are the functions that we're going to be using today. So we're going to be using this, and or this, depending on which calculator you've got. And the way you get that, the thing that's just above the button, is you tap the shift key and then you tap the sine button, and that will give you the inverse sine. That's what this is called, the sine with a little -1. It's called an inverse sine. So same thing on your Sharp calculator. Say you wanted to have inverse cosine, this thing up here, you'd press second function and then the cosine button. Okay, another little reminder about our formula triangles. So this one here is for sine, you'll remember, hopefully. That one's sine. And if I cover up, do you remember we cover up the thing we want to find? So if I cover up the S, so that's telling me the sine of the angle, what I'm left with is the O and the H. The O is on top, so that's O over H, or O divided by H. So we would write that as the sine of the angle, so sin for sine of the angle, I'm going to use that little a for angle, is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. And what that means is, because we're going to be looking to find the angle, if I do this opposite divided by hypotenuse, that will tell me the sine of the angle. So what I need to do is get the angle out of this sine function. So I need to unsine it. I need to inverse sine it. And so I've just shown you how we find the inverse sine. On our calculator, we need to use that shift key, or the second function. So if I want to get the angle out, sine of the angle was opposite over hypotenuse, so we're going to need to do the inverse sine of that. So sine with the little -1, like we saw on the calculator, of opposite over hypotenuse. So in a sine type question, this is how I would find the angle. I would do inverse sine, so that's shift and the sine button on my calculator, of the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. How about for cosine then? So this is my cosine triangle. So in a cosine question, let's cover up the thing that we're looking for here. We're looking for the angle, or initially cosine of the angle. And cosine of my angle is going to be equal to, I've got A over H, so that's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. That's the cosine of the angle, so to get the angle out, I'm going to need to use inverse cosine. I'm going to do inverse cosine of the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay, and similar thing for tan. If we start off by covering up the thing we're looking for, so tan of the angle in this case, and then, so this is the tangent one, I should say, tangent, there we go, and then tan of our angle, so tan A is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. So we've got the O on the top, the A underneath, so the opposite over the adjacent, and then to get the angle out of that, so the angle out of that is going to be inverse tan of the opposite over the adjacent. There we go. Okay, so those three, maybe it's a good idea to write some of that down as a wee note before we go on. Those three are the only three things we're going to need to remember and need to use to find the missing angles. It's just a question of, is it a sine question, a cosine question, or a tangent question? So let's have a look then. Right, we are asked to find angle ACB. That's this one here that's conveniently marked out in grey for us. So we just need to decide then, am I using a sine, a cosine, or a tangent to get this angle? So the first thing we're going to have to do is label our sides. This 10 centimetre one is the hypotenuse, I hope you'll agree. and this 6 centimetre one is the opposite, I reckon. So we've got a hypotenuse and we've got an opposite. Which one of these is going to be useful then? It's this one, isn't it? This is a sine question. So that means that sine of our angle, let's go back and cover up the thing we're looking for. So we're looking at sine of the angle. It's opposite over hypotenuse then, isn't it? So sine of the angle is opposite over hypotenuse. Let's put in some numbers. That means that sine of the angle is, what was my opposite? 6 over my hypotenuse 10, which means my angle is going to be inverse sine of 6 over 10. So you can type that into your calculator using the fraction button, or you could just type this bit into your calculator using 6 divided by 10. You'd get the exact same thing, so I'll write that underneath just so we're clear. So you could also type it into your calculator like this: inverse sine of 6 divided by 10. Ooh, missed that dot. There we go. And that would give you the exact same answer. So I'm going to do that just now. I'm going to do inverse sine of 6 divided by 10. And the answer I get is 36.8698 and a bunch of other stuff coming after that. Let's go back to the question. It says we're going to round to 1 decimal place. So if we're rounding to 1 decimal place, that's going to be 36 point. I've got an 8 here, but the next digit is a 6. So the 6 tells me that I should round that up. So it's 36.9 is the answer I'm going to give. 36.9 degrees. And I'm going to write brackets 1 dp to show that I've rounded. There we go. So I found the missing angle in this triangle. I found angle ACB, this one here, 36.9 degrees. Okay, let's try another. We've got angle DEF is the one we're looking for. Again, helpfully marked for us in grey. We just need to decide then which of my 3 formulae is going to be the useful one. Now this side is opposite the angle we're talking about, so that guy has to be the opposite, and the other side is next to the angle we're talking about, and it's definitely not the hypotenuse, so that one must be the adjacent. There we go, that's the adjacent. So if I've got an opposite and I've got an adjacent, which is going to be the useful one? It's this one this time, isn't it? This is a tangent type question. Okay, so tan of my angle is equal to, let's cover up the thing we're looking for, O over A is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. So if we put some numbers in that, tan of my angle is equal to 54 over 34. Yeah, happy with that? So I want to get my angle out, so I'm going to need to use inverse tangent now. So the angle is going to be equal to the inverse tangent of 54 over 34. And again, you can use the fraction button on your calculator to put it in like this, or you could put it in with the division sign, so 54 divided by 34. Either way, I'm popping that into my calculator now. So we've got inverse tan of 54 over 34. And my calculator is telling me that that is 57.804 and a bunch of other stuff. Question again is asking me to round to 1 decimal place, so let's do that. I've got 57.8. The next digit is a 0, so I'm not rounding this up. I'm going to keep it where it is. 57.8 degrees. There we go. There's my answer. Brackets 1 dp to show that I have rounded. Okay, good. Let's try another. Okay, what have we got going on here then? So this one here looks like a hypotenuse to me. It's opposite the right angle, and that is definitely the longest side. How about this one? Well, it's not the opposite, because this one would be the opposite, so it's next to the angle. That must be the adjacent. I'll mark that as the adjacent. Good. So which one's useful here? Not going to be sine. Not going to be tangent, it's got to be cosine. This is a cosine question. Okay, so cosine of my angle is equal to, well, let's cover it up in the triangle and see. So cosine is equal to A over H, adjacent over hypotenuse. It's equal to A, whoops, I'm using the highlighter still, whoops. Let's try that again. A over H, the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So let's put some numbers in. That means cosine of my angle is equal to 10.5 over 13. Okay, I want to get the angle out of that, so that's going to be the angle is equal to inverse cosine of 10.5 over 13. Oh, by the way, depending on the type of calculator you've got, you may or may not need to put in these brackets. I think it's the case that on a Sharp calculator, it doesn't mind if you put the brackets in or not, and on a Casio calculator, it likes to have the brackets there. So just have a little play around with whatever calculator you've got and check that you're getting the same answer as me. And if it says syntax error or something like that, then that probably means you need to pop in some brackets. Okay, so we're going to do inverse cosine of this. I'm going to pop that in my calculator. So we've got inverse cosine of 10.5 over 13. And my calculator is telling me that the answer is 36.1289 and a bunch of other stuff. Good. So we're rounding that to one decimal place again. I've got 36.1. The next digit is a 2. So that's not gonna round up then, is it? 36.1 is my answer. 36.1 degree. There's my answer. I've rounded it to one decimal place, like the question asked for. We'll do one more example, I think. There we go. So this one here, let's look at what we've got. Well, here's my right angle. This side is directly opposite, so that's got to be my hypotenuse. And I've got this side here, which is opposite my angle, so that one must be the opposite. So which of my formulae is useful? This is a sine question, isn't it? Okay, so we're looking at sine of the angle this time. Sine of the angle is equal to, cover it up in my formula triangle, sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Is equal to the opposite, oh, still using the highlighter again, sorry. Let's try again. Is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Put in some numbers then. That means sine of my angle is equal to 9 over 11. And I want to get the angle out of that, so we're going to have to use our inverse sine. So we're going to say inverse sine of 9 over 11. Or maybe you're writing it like this, 9 divided by 11. You'll get exactly the same answer. So I'm popping that in my calculator. Shift sine 9 over 11. And my calculator has told me that the answer is 54.9031 and some other stuff. Let's round that to one decimal place. That's going to be 54 point, well, I've got this 9, the next digit is a 0, so the 0 is telling me that I need to leave that as it is, 54.9. I want some degrees on it, and I'm going to say it's rounded to one decimal place, and there's my answer. Okay, good stuff. I'll see you later, guys. Bye.